We next enter into the classical period. Now, art historians frequently cite the date of 480 as the beginning of the early classical period, based on the Greek defeat of the Persian invasion around 480 at Salamis and at the Battle of Plataea. This includes, of course, the famous Battle of Thermopylae, or 300. And what we see is this invasion. So in 490, the Persians had tried to invade Greece, and they're doing this because the Greeks are starting to back some revolts and some unrest right here in the Ionian colonies, which of course are fighting against the Persians who control the area. Persians aren't terribly happy with this, so we have the Battle of Marathon. 10 years later, they come back, and we have the battles of the Persian War in 480. This includes, amongst other things, the burning of Athens. But when the Athenians win, because they will, what we see is increased Grecian morale, a culmination of Greek classical culture, a time of which we see great dramatists, historians, statesmen, and philosophers emerge. And this is often seen as the height of Greek culture. What's happening is they won this great war. They're incredibly optimistic about who they are. And so we will see this span of time, about 50, 60 years, where things are really good. They're going to build a lot of things. They're going to have a lot of art. Things are going very well. Athens feels like it's at the center of the world, and that's really where we're going to be focusing. This whole thing will fall apart when we get to the Peloponnesian War later on, about 431, and it runs until the end of the century, about 404, where everything kind of collapses. Now, this is very similar to the United States, where after World War II, we were the manufacturing center. We probably controlled 75% of all manufacturing in the world. And we saw incredible optimism in the 50s, the 60s. We put a man on the moon. We broke the speed barrier with aircraft. We did all sorts of things. We see incomes tripling. And so when that happens, we see this flourishing of the culture. We see it in the US, we see it in Greece. And then, of course, in the US, we don't have a war at the end of it that kind of ends it at a dead stop, but we do see it sort of tapering off. I would argue that we don't see the same optimism today that we saw in the 1950s and 60s. So really the same sort of idea. The early classical running up until that fall, effectively.